Well, I guess we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. If we have not met yet, I am Ryan McKinster. I'm the Government Affairs Director here at the BIA. Just give you a little background. We've been running webinars actually on Tuesdays normally since pretty much this whole current situation we're in started. It was weekly, now it's gone up to about every 2 weeks. Mainly the most recent focus on permitting in the different jurisdictions and what's kind of in place now that we're under kind of a long-term, we know where we're going to sit with some of the requirements and prohibitions on meetings and stuff. So if you're interested in that, if you have to permit, if you're doing permitting, you've got clients doing permitting, and if they are working in Battleground or you're working in Battleground, I'd recommend tuning in, registering for our webinar on Tuesday. We will have someone from permitting and someone from the building officials office online to kind of give you a rundown of their normal protocols and process now, and answer any of your questions. Now that my pitch is done, I want to introduce Jessica Bull. She's with JLA Public Involvement, excuse me, it's early for me. And to give you guys a little bit of background real quickly, talking about the I-5 bridge closure, it will affect everybody. I'm sure you're aware of that. I am not sure, especially if you're in the construction industry, how it will affect you. There are a few things that we have highlighted, one of them being if you have subs or staff coming from Portland, that is obviously an issue. If you have supplies or, for example, if you're doing, you're someone that's in charge of interiors and stuff and you're going to look at showroom spaces, that's going to affect you as well. But the biggest one, I think, is if you are going to be picking up or dropping off permits or applications or having any interaction with the jurisdictions of mainly Clark County and Vancouver, but also I would assume, and this is going to be a question for Jessica, Camas and Washougal, you need to be very conscientious about that. Especially Clark County, which is doing everything by appointment, who's backed up by weeks. If you miss your appointment, you are going to be weeks out before you can get that application put back in. So I think that's very important to realize the timing and the planning you need to do for approximately a week from today. So with that, Jessica, I'm going to give the floor to you, and I'm going to give over control to you as well.
Great. Thanks for having me today, Ryan. Ryan reached out after hearing about the project and kind of thinking through for all of you some of the obstacles that you might face during the 9-day closure. We're already seeing traffic impacts out there on the road, especially at night. So if any of you use that route between Portland or Vancouver, I-5, or are in that general area, you're probably already seeing some of that traffic happen. So I just have a short PowerPoint. I'm just going to kind of run through the major traffic impacts and what we expect to see on the road, what some of the traffic modeling shows, and then just share with you some of our messaging to the public and the public communications campaign that's going on right now. And I will pull this up. All right. One moment, here we go. Okay, so it's the Interstate Bridge Trunnion Replacement project, and there is a cracked trunnion on one of the towers. As many of you know, I'm sure, this bridge is over 100 years old. It takes maintenance pretty much year-round to keep this bridge in working order. And the trunnion, along with other parts on the bridge, will be replaced from September 12th to the 20th. Crews are already out there setting it up, getting false work set to support the lift spans and all the different pieces as they take them out and put them back in during these 9 days and haul out the old equipment. So, we are expecting some significant traffic congestion and delays. The northbound span will be completely closed, and traffic going north and south will be sharing the current southbound span. So that's 3 lanes. So essentially, we are cutting the ability for, about half the amount of traffic to get through. There's going to be a zipper barrier on the southbound bridge that's going to change the lanes. So in the morning, we'll have 2 southbound lanes going into Portland following the commute, and in the evening, 2 northbound lanes going into Vancouver. And you can see here on this graphic, it shows that. As I mentioned, we are already starting with the traffic impacts. We started in August, and they can potentially go all the way through October. So that includes immediately after the 9-day closure, a 7-day lane closure on I-5 South across the bridge to clean up after the project, nighttime lane closures, which we're already seeing, bridge lifts as well that can last up to 30 minutes going northbound, and nighttime ramp closures in the area. Now, during the 9-day closure, outside of the northbound span closing, there'll also be 4 area ramps that are closed fully for 9 days. That's Marine Drive on-ramp to I-5. That's the Hayden Island on-ramp to I-5 North. That's SR14 Washington Street on-ramp to I-5 South in downtown Vancouver, and I-5 North to SR14 East off-ramp. So all of these will have detours. Typically, they're the next exit or next one down, and it'll just loop you around. But all of those detours and detour maps are on the website if you use any of those regularly and you're interested in that. And now for the fun part. So the traffic impacts during construction, they did traffic modeling off of normal levels in September to sort of see what the area might look like. And this is if travelers don't change their behavior. So if everybody gets on the road just as they typically do, again, this is pre-COVID levels. So we would be looking at 4 miles of backup on either side of the bridge going into Washington and Oregon, increased demand on the entire freeway system, including SR14 and I-205. And under typical traffic levels, we see about 7 hours of congestion in the region. With this closure, if people don't change their travel habits, we're looking at 7 hours typically. We'd be looking at 16 if people didn't change their behaviors. So as we're talking about trying to even just get around the region, I know that there were some Washougal and other areas out to the east that Ryan highlighted. There's potentially going to be, delays on SR14, I-205, I-84. It could really impact the whole system. So that's one of the reasons, the messaging that we're putting out to the public is so important. We have been really asking those during these 9 days who can stay off the road to stay off the road, to delay or shift those trips if they're shopping trips or trips for recreation, to work from home, which many of us have gotten quite comfortable doing. Bus and transit is still an option for many people, and many people are still relying on it. And during the 9 days, bus and transit will be made a priority. Some of those ramps will be open, and there'll also be bus on shoulder on I-205 and I-5, which means when traffic levels drop below 35 miles per hour, buses can scoot over to the shoulder to bypass traffic. C-Tran and TriMet are also adding additional buses to their existing routes to meet demand if it happens to be there during the closure. And then some other options for people are potentially rail service and rideshare. And of course, we always want to highlight the current public health crisis and to follow those guidelines and recommendations when choosing your travel strategies. Again, this goes over the transit improvements that we're going to see. And then both in Southwest Washington and Oregon, there's a Get There platform, which basically helps you plan your trip. So through transit or rideshare or biking, it's just a tool to think through how you might get around. Now, I imagine many of you may need to drive during this time, or perhaps transit isn't an option. So we're really, if you have to drive during that time, it's going to take some planning. It's going to either take some rerouting or giving yourself extra time to, get yourself where you need to go. So we've been doing public involvement and public outreach for this project for almost 3 years. We're in the middle of a large public communications campaign right now. You may have seen us in print or in digital, Oregonian, the Columbian. We also have a large presence on social media, and we're getting a lot of earned media right now as well. So we're really trying to get the word out as much as possible and hoping that travelers will modify their behavior where they can. And thanks for having me today. I went through that kind of quickly, but I'm happy to take any questions about, any of the traffic impacts or delays that may affect you.
So if anybody has any questions, feel free just to speak up. We don't need to do the hand raise or anything. I just remind you, you're probably gonna have to take yourself off mute. Just highlight your face on it, and if you haven't used Zoom before, and just click on the little microphone, and that should help you with that. To start out, I guess I had a question, Jessica.
Yeah.
I think in the presentation I saw also, there's a discussion of arterials, especially around Vancouver. Can you speak to that about maybe there's some traffic routing on the arterials, or some concerns with that, what's going to happen down there?
In terms of local streets?
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't have specific traffic modeling for that, but there is an expectation that if people are hitting a lot of congestion, that it's possible that they try to get off onto local streets. And one of the things I can say is that sort of those exits, those immediate exits off of I-5 North being closed will prevent some of that for downtown Vancouver, because people won't immediately be able to get off. There'll certainly be some increased traffic on the detour routes, and some of those are on local streets in downtown Vancouver. So that I-5 South on-ramp in downtown Vancouver that's closed will direct people north. So there's some roads there that will see increased traffic. We don't have any traffic modeling done for that. It's difficult to tell what drivers will do given their options, but we do expect to see it. I mean, not only throughout the freeway system, but it could be on local roads, especially in North Portland, where people try to avoid the highway and they go on some of those major streets.
Well, if anybody else has any questions, just speak up. I guess I will continue. I think one of the things, at least for a lot of our builders, because we have a lot of activity, Camas area, Washougal area. So do you have any modeling of like the approaches to 205 on 14 from either side or anything like that? Or do we know if I'm assuming there are going to be backups there. Just there is generally during rush hour anyways.
Yeah, so I think really the traffic modeling around that is to look at that we generally have 7 hours, and now we're looking at 16.
Okay.
So whatever you see on the road, it's roughly about double the time. So, if you are typically sit in rush hour traffic, and it takes you, a half an hour, 45 minutes to get somewhere, you should really plan for an hour and a half or an hour and 45 if you're traveling at those peak hours.
As a follow-on to that, then I guess, so during not peak hours, there's going to be obviously more pressure. So we don't expect obviously possibly doubling of times. When you have free-flowing traffic, you don't know what that means. Are we expecting at least a slowdown all day long, backup all day long?
I think it's hard to speak to it that specifically. I mean, 16 hours a day, It's the majority of the day.
Okay.
So, we assume that we're still going to see those peak hours being those commute hours, but it really also means that commute window and where we see that congestion is really going to increase. So maybe we see it from 6 to 9 now. Well, that will probably be from 5 to 11 or 5 to noon. We don't have the ability to put that level of specificity to it, but we want to give people a general idea of like it will take you longer to get where you need to go, and it's a good idea to check TripCheck, which is an ODOT site where they go through very carefully and your route, and you can see what's going on there. For those of us who have smartphones, Google generally has a pretty good estimate, and then WashDOT also has a similar site to Trip Check. And Trip Check also has like a webcam if you want to see what's going out on the road.
Actually, I didn't plan this, Jessica. This wasn't a lead in, but I'd also recommend, which I've included information, it will go out on our social media too. If you have a smartphone and you can, please try to use Waze. I don't get paid by Waze, but I use it religiously for over a couple years now. And you can put it, if you have, assuming you have an appointment with Clark County, to drop off a permit at noon. You can put in noon at that morning and it will constantly update and tell you as you get closer and closer to the point. So if it normally said, if it said, oh, you've got to leave at 11:30, as time progresses, it will tell you by the minute as it gets, because it's real time fed by cars in the system. So just a piece of advice, if you set the times you need to be at places that you know for sure in the morning or the day before, whatever else, it will, if you tell it to, it will give you warnings when you have to leave. And it just basically, the algorithm creates a smaller and smaller window until you get closer to that time. So just reminding everybody, I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but I am extremely worried about people missing permit times. This is something we've been working on for over a month at Clark County, not with this issue, but with the very long 4 to 6 week of permit times. I know how much that could hurt your project. So if you can do that, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, and thanks for highlighting the Waze. I would also say if your travel route during the 9-day closure includes I-5 North or I-5 South and trying to get across the bridge, and you're trying to make some type of appointment, really give yourself extra time. Because if we see a crash on I-5, it's going to back everything up. Now, we have a thorough emergency response plan. There's so many different agencies involved. But if that happens out on the road during the 9-day closure, there's really no preventing even more of a delay. So it's really about us all thinking through where we need to go and our trips and planning it out more than we would typically.
Great. Jessica, we actually have a request. Could you put up the closed ramp slide again?
Oh, yep. Let's see.
And for everybody on the call, I will be sending out this video. That usually takes a little time. I have my comms person clean it up for me a little bit. I wish she could take my face out, but she refuses to do that. And with that, I will also send this. Well, Jessica, if you're willing to share, and if you're willing to share, I will also send this PowerPoint out to everyone so you can share it with your staff or your clients or whoever you think needs to see it.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, we talk about that the lanes are going to be, shut down in a certain way, 2 lanes going, 2 lanes going the other way, and 1. Do we have an approximate time of when the switcheroo is going to be and how long that will take? Is everybody stopped? How is that going to work?
Yeah, so the zipper barrier, I'm just pulling it up here, it works with traffic on the road. So a lane doesn't have to shift. If you actually see the picture of the zipper barrier, it's closing one lane as it's opening another behind it.
Okay.
So I'm just pulling it up so I do not quote it incorrectly. It takes about, we're quoting about an hour for that to happen. It probably will take less time, but for the morning commute, the lanes will shift between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. And then for the evening commute, for 1 southbound lane and 2 northbound lanes, it'll happen at noon.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you'll just be able to keep using the bridge. The zipper barrier doesn't shut down traffic at all. A zipper barrier is used every day on the Golden Gate Bridge and on, different bridges around the country, but that's kind of the most well-known one.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions? This is your chance. Since we all got up here early, we want to take advantage of this. Well, if we don't have any other questions, actually, I got a question from Jessica, a different Jessica. What kind of delays do you think will happen with supplies during this time? I couldn't answer that to some extent because I do not know what people use for suppliers. For example, a lot of wood actually has, they have lay down yards or actual yards or stores on our side for your suppliers on the south side. I do know, for example, a lot of people, if you're a home builder and some of your finishing kind of things, appliances or stuff, fireplaces and stuff like that, inserts. I know a lot of those locations are actually all in the same location. Their warehouses are down over by the airport, kind of east of, over by Costco there. So for example, that could be an issue if you're building a house. I am not sure about other suppliers. I think like it's probably dependent on what you're doing. That is a recommendation that we've had. I've tried to get out through social media, and we'll remind everybody again, you really need to plan for some of those things. I do know stuff comes from Portland for a lot of your guys. And even for like the lay down yards or for other things or staging areas for lumber and stuff like that. I know those have to get, a lot of times that they come into Portland and then they get transferred up to their locations. So if you have any supplier that you work with that is based out of Portland, but they got satellites in Vancouver, that could be a problem only if they did not plan for this. I'm assuming they've thought this out as well, but we never know. One of those things I guess I would speak to is for some of these things, for actual hard goods for building, that may have not been a possibility due to the fact that we're so short and we're so behind with all the things going on. Right now, we can't obviously get lumbers through the roof on pricing. Other appliances and stuff are not even available. And so if they're doing real-time, inventory control, obviously they can't plan for this. So that could be a concern. If any of you are in real estate, or if you're working about closings, or you're getting your certificate of occupancy, we're already seeing problems like that right now because certain finishing things you need, electrical junction boxes or stuff are backing up. So I didn't think about that, but I really appreciate that question, Jessica, because that is something you have to consider. One more question, or if you saw it, Jessica, has ODOT changed their modeling at all with COVID?
No, those traffic modelings, they didn't re-pull that, but what I can share with COVID is that ODOT saw traffic levels go down to about a 50% in March, April. Those traffic levels are climbing up, even with schools being remote and a lot of people still working from home. They're seeing traffic now at about 80% of normal levels. And they're expecting that to continue to go up as more and more people feel more comfortable traveling again. So there is a little bit of difference there that we're seeing, but not much.
I can say for anecdotally, I make the commute from North Portland to Vancouver downtown every day. And as of about a month ago, my commute, I'm going against traffic, but my commute each way, the other side looks exactly the same as it did before COVID hit. So 20% is a pretty big drop, but visually their stuff's still backed up. So it's a little bit of a concern.
Right. Well, thanks for having me today. I just want to let everybody know I will share the PowerPoint, but you can also go to interstatebridge.org, and there's all of the information and more is there. You can also sign up for project updates. We send out a traffic impacts for the next week every Thursday morning. And there's also an email and a hotline there. If something comes up and you need some specific information, feel free to reach out.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Jessica.
Yes.
As usual, everybody, thank you. A lot of times the easiest way to find out about our webinars is on our Facebook page. It's BIA of Clark County. Also our website, biaofclarkcounty.org. I encourage you to go on that regularly. And we are doing these webinars, like I mentioned. Tuesday, we will have a webinar with Battleground talking about permitting and inspections and what's going on right now in the protocols. Following that, the Tuesday after, which I believe is the 15th, we will have, these are at 9:30 a.m., we will be having La Center and Ridgefield to wrap up all of our jurisdictions. Clark County will be down the road. There are a lot of issues we're working on now with them until they get some of the new processes in place. It's a little premature to have that meeting, but I know I've been asked, so I'm letting you know. As soon as we have some of these processes in place over the next 2 or 3 weeks that are set a little bit more in stone, I will be having a webinar with them as well. Thank you, Jessica. Really appreciate your time this day and this early in the morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you have staff or colleagues that you think should see this, this will be sent out to you as a link as soon as it gets processed, as well as the PowerPoint for Jessica. If you have any questions on this or anything, any COVID-related protocols or compliance issues, or just anything generally regarding building, permitting, anything along those lines, please give me a call or an email. That's what I'm here for. And have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Enjoy the 3-day weekend and be safe out there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.